What's going on, folks? Welcome back to another Ranger Talk video. I got another special one here for y'all. I'm talking with none other than Jordan of the magnificent Carmeria. What's going on, man? How you doing?
Hey man, thank you for the wonderful introduction. I am doing fantastic. How are you?
Good, good. I cannot complain. I'm super stoked to chat with you. So thanks so much for taking the time to do this.
Yeah, no worries, man. Thanks so much for having me on. Really looking forward to chatting with you.
Yeah, my absolute pleasure. So, I guess the band it started back in what, like 2013, right? But the debut full-length album didn't drop until like 2021. What was that process kind of like as far as getting from the creation of the band up to the release of the debut album?
Yeah, man. So it was quite a long process. So the band, I think, actually originally formed in 2012.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and it was originally a prog rock, female fronted prog rock outfit. They released one EP and then subsequently broke up. And so the only original member from that time period is Jerry, the guitarist.
Wow.
So yeah, yeah. So what happened with that? So they broke up, and then I'd sort of met Jerry and the former keyboard player Lisa at like some rock night out in the city, back in sort of 2013, and I just happened to have them on Facebook, and they posted this instrumental track, um, on just shared it on their personal profiles, and I saw it, and they were sort of looking for a new singer because they wanted to reform Carmeria as a symphonic metal band, and symphonic metal was right up my alley. I grew up listening to a lot of that stuff and absolutely loved the instrumental they put up. And so I downloaded the track immediately and recorded a vocal demo for it. And this was like back in the days, I was like recording into a laptop microphone, and I was sort of like, I didn't have, an interface or a microphone or anything. I was just kind
Yeah.
of, I'd listen to it, I'd put my headphones on, and I'd get up, like bring the laptop up to my mouth and sing into it. And so I'd do vocal arrangements like that, and then recorded it, and it sounded dreadful, but it was enough to get an idea of what I was hearing in my head across. And so I sent it back to them, and they really enjoyed it. And so I think I went in for a formal sort of audition kind of thing after that, and then
Yeah.
got the job in 2014. And then it was kind of a bit of a process trying to finalize a lineup. So we had a few people come and go over that time, and I was quite busy in a few other bands, and so playing a lot of shows and touring a lot and recording a lot with them. And Carmeria kind of went on the back burner a bit, just because we hadn't gotten a full lineup together. We were still sharing ideas remotely, so we used to write on like Guitar Pro 5, I think. Like I'd write. This is before we had any sort of recording software or whatever. And I'd come up with these musical ideas in Guitar Pro 5 and then send it off to Jerry, and then he'd record it and then send it back, and then I'd do my little vocal thing over the top. But it was kind of very casual. It was sort of like we'd, get together a couple of times, work on the music a bit, and then we'd, go off and do other things for 3 to 6 months. And so it really was a very long casual process up until about sort of 2016, where we managed to finalize the lineup and release our first single, which was Carpe Noctem, back in 2016. So yeah, to think that song's nearly 10 years old is
Oh my
wild.
gosh.
Couple years ago, but yeah, and then about sort of 6 months later, we released, or sort of 5 months later, we released Solaris, which was our second single, and that was in 2017. And then we had a couple of lineup shifts and everything like that. We played a few shows, which was pretty cool. But we, over that time period, we kind of solidified what would come the basis for our debut album. So we had about, I think, of the debut album, we probably had about seven of the songs written. And then in 2018, we got two new members on board. So that was a new keyboard player and a new drummer. So that was Mishka and Lachlan, who basically solidified the lineup for Advene, which was our debut.
Yeah.
Lachlan has since departed the band as of last year. But that was the lineup that helped us, release that album. And so it was a bit of a process. There were a lot of learning curves involved. I think, symphonic metal can be quite a challenging genre to learn to write. And we were all sort of in our early 20s when we kind of got into it. So there was a lot of learning involved. We've since, built our own home studios. We, do a lot of things DIY.
Yeah.
And so there was just, it was just a bit of, yeah, to trying to accumulate experience and songwriting and production skills and all that kind of stuff over that time. And then, yeah, finally released the album in 2021. So very long process. But yeah, I think, we ended up with a product that we were really proud of. And we're able to, like, through that process, learn how to streamline our production process in order to get music out faster, which is why it only took half the time to get out into the second album.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. It's really cool. You guys kind of really had the classic kind of garage band sort of start, where you're just kind of gradually learning as you go and building
Yeah,
upon
totally.
things. And it's really neat. It's not like you all just came together, hashed out this album, and it's just, yeah, years
Yeah.
of experience led up to it. So that's really cool.
Yeah,
You
totally,
know,
man. Yeah.
Yeah, and like you said, symphonic metal is certainly not I wouldn't say that's a beginner's genre as far as
No,
trying to create and write music,
for
and
sure.
similar to like power metal, stuff like that. It's much more complex.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I find it so neat, just the style of Carmeria is quite unique, it's quite different. And the best I could think of is it kind of like a mix between like Camelot and Hymn, something like that.
Yeah.
There's definitely that gothic influence, but like symphonic. So what were kind of the influences or the inspirations behind the sound?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's so funny that you mentioned Camelot and him, because that was exactly what I was going for this second
Oh,
album.
okay.
Like, when I sort of, I had a pretty good idea of where I wanted to take it not long after the debut came out, because we've been working on the debut for all up like 6 years.
Yeah.
And so we're pretty ready to, like, well, at least I was ready to move on as soon as it had come out. And I thought I had quite a strong vision for the second album and pitched it to the band as like, yeah, let's do like a melding of symphonic metal and gothic rock, like Camelot meets him. And so that really was, I guess, the template going into this record. And it sort of worked out because it certainly didn't feel forced. A lot of the stuff I write tends to just sit in that, I guess, that middle place between symphonic metal and gothic rock. So it certainly felt natural to me. And yeah, and the other guys were into it too, which was great.
Sweet. Yeah, that's awesome. And you can kind of tell going from Advene to Tragedy d'Amour that just kind of natural evolution, that refinement, because Advene is really solid, but it's
Hmm.
like Tragedy d'Amour, has a bit more of a refined sound. Like the band is a little bit more comfortable in kind of doing what they feel, And did you notice kind of that shift between the first album to the second?
Yeah, I definitely think so. The first album obviously took quite a fair while to get out there and to put together. And I think, having learnt a lot of the skills and the processes through that first album, that really helped to streamline the creative process for album two. So there were a few things that we took from album one into album two. Like, I
Hmm.
sort of learned how to produce and arrange and upskilled in songwriting and stuff like that. So I produced this second album, and I felt that you know producing your own band really helps to, I guess, facilitate a more transparent, version of your art. You're sort of not, writing a bunch of things and then taking it somewhere else to have external input, which is great. And there are certainly so many great albums that have had external producers. And I've had, such a privilege of working with some great producers and learning off so many of them. But just as a principal songwriter, I kind of wanted a bit more of that sort of intimate input as a producer. And so learning how to produce was certainly, a long experience and a long time coming. But yeah, I think that just really helped to solidify the sound for album two. Is Advene was kind of a lot of different parts over, so many years. And
Right.
Tragedy the More was, yeah, a lot more refined, as you said. And I guess, a lot more. It was a much more intimate approach, and I spent, so many hours on those songs and put a lot of myself into them that yeah, I sort of went a bit nuts at the end there. But yeah, I think moving forward at least, it certainly helped to streamline that process of how we operate, how we songwrite, how we arrange, and how we collaborate. So yeah, fingers crossed that album 3 will only be, I don't know, if we halve that time again, 18 months away.
Sweet. Yeah, sounds good to me.
We'll see.
When,
Not making any
yeah, right.
promises.
No promises. When you first signed on as vocalist, did you know that you were going to kind of become the songwriter, or did that just kind of naturally happen?
Yeah, no, definitely not. That sort of, yeah, I was just happy to be there, man. Like,
Yeah.
and Jerry, such a talented guitarist and songwriter in his own right. What happened with this sort of album was Jerry was very busy with uni, and he kind of just said, "Look, take the reins on this one. You know, more than happy for you to go nuts with what you want to do." And I sort of went, "Great," because I'm kind of going into that gothic rock thing.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I never, through Advene, like a lot of those songs were mine. But Tragedy kind of really, I guess, solidified my confidence in being a songwriter, um, and arranger. And so, yeah, I was super grateful for that opportunity. I think that'll likely be something that we take into the future of the band. But yeah, all the guys always have great ideas. So yeah, it's I never feel pressured to have to kind of pump out all these songs because
Right.
Mish comes up with the keyboard player comes up with some really cool ideas for songs, and Jerry as well, of course. So yeah. So it's yeah, didn't come into the band feeling like I would be the songwriter, but it kind of has just developed that way naturally.
Cool. Yeah, it's interesting you say that too, because one thing I think that stands out about the band, in particular, the latest album, Tragedy d'Amour, is that it really feels like, I mean, you have a very unique kind of vocal style for the symphonic metal genre, and that's partly where that gothic rock influence really comes into play. And I think that highlights your vocal style very well. And so it's just with that album, it feels like the songs were crafted kind of around your voice, as opposed to crafting these songs and then you trying to force your voice into those songs. And it was that kind of the way that you go about it, like really kind of crafting these songs around your voice, instead of like shooting
Um,
for the stars and then just like, okay, wow, now I have to sing to this.
well, that definitely happened with a couple of songs on the record, but I think yeah, over the last sort of few years, I've sort of grown accustomed to writing vocal parts to my own music. And so yeah, the two kind of go hand in hand, I suppose. I always start with the music first, so I'm not someone who kind of like I will have ideas for melodies and lyrics
Mhm.
occasionally, but which I'll voice memo very quickly while I'm in the car or something. But
Yeah.
usually it's like I start with the music and then
Mhm.
I'll sit on that for a bit, and then I'll either hear melodies or sometimes I'll have to like play around to get something that I'm happy with. But yeah, it definitely didn't feel forced on this record for the most part. Everything sort of came quite naturally, and I think just sitting in the sort of principal songwriter's chair and the producer chair kind of helped that.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I also worked with a very good friend of mine who's a fantastic producer called Boya. He plays guitar. I sing in another band called Bad Me Born, and he's the guitarist and producer, and I've learnt so much from him. But he did the vocal engineering for this record, and we've had, you know, about 5 years experience of recording together. And so when I sort of went in, and we had demos sorted for all the songs when we went in, but his ideas for harmonies or changing just a couple of notes here and there, I felt really helped to bring out the best in those melodies. So
Mhm.
working with him was a big plus as well.
Is it difficult kind of, a lot of the songs, they're quite intricate with just all the different instruments, and you got symphonics going, you got piano going, you have these great melodies weaving through. I mean, how do you rein all of that in, and make like a nice, concise, like, flowing song instead of it just like being all over the place? Do you sit there and just pull your hair out all the time? Like, how do I make sense of this
That's
madness?
with great patience and discipline, my friend. There have been multiple times that I've just wanted to go completely all out. And that was something that really happened with Advene. Advene was very much, throwing the kitchen sink in. Like there was 750 vocal layers on that record, in addition to entire orchestration for every single song. The idea for this record was definitely to scale it back. And I think as an arranger and as a producer, that is kind of your job to sort of pull it back. Some people have, might have these outlandish ideas that sound amazing, in that sort of time that you come up with them. But then you really need to focus on, all right, what's the focal point in this part of the song? And how do we accentuate that? And how do we make sure the other instruments are accompanying that in a way that complements it? And so, yeah, having that discipline is super important, because I'm like, when I first, I guess, started out, I really wanted to just chuck massive amounts of vocal layers on absolutely everything, because I was just like, this sounds so fucking cool, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, but then, when everything sparkles, nothing shines, right? So you've got to really pick those moments where you want to have those big vocal layers or just like a single harmony. And I think going into this record as well, stripping back a lot of the major vocal layers and orchestration to sort of accentuate the intimacy, as it's a love metal record.
Yeah.
It's love and loss, and those two things are so intimately experienced by all of us. And so I think that certainly played a part in not going all out all the time. I think there's certainly parts in the record that we do that, but I think having that dynamic really plays into that paradigm of love and loss as well. So trying to find different ways of layering the concept of the album into the instrumentation and arranging was something that wasn't 100% intentional at the time, but looking back, it sort of makes a bit of sense. I wish I could go into it saying, "Oh, yeah, that was the intention, the whole, all the way."
Right.
But looking back on it, yeah, I feel like, a lot of those songs were written quite naturally, and I think when you're writing about those themes, and you're really sort of honing in on your own personal experiences about them, it sort of weaves itself into the music anyway. So yeah, I think, yeah, might not have been the goal going in, but ended up being the goal coming out.
Sweet. Awesome. And speaking of lyrics, they also fall in line with that kind of gothic rock influence as well. And do you write the lyrics?
Yeah. So I'm, yeah, predominantly the lyric writer. There is one song on the album, Burning Ships, that Emma, our bass player, sings, and she wrote the lyrics for that. But yeah, all of the other sort of lyrics come from me, for better or worse.
No, like I said, it really suits the style and the vibe. And what are do you have inspirations on that? Like, any novels or poems or poets or things like that kind of drive
um,
your ideas?
not particularly. So this is going to sound super pretentious, but I just hear lyrics in my head when I'm working out melodies for the music. So a big part of my I guess upbringing in rock and metal in the early days was playing in bands that wrote music like in the rehearsal room. And so you're jamming on something and you're coming up with something on the fly. And
Wow.
so yeah, so that was, I spent, probably 7 or 8 years doing that. And so to the point now that, if I hear a piece of music, often, not all the time, but often I can just hear the melody and hear the idea for the lyrics. So
Wow.
yeah, it kind of, oh man, like I hate saying this, but I feel like, the music tells me what the lyrics want to be about. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
oh,
So it's like
yeah.
plucking
Wow.
the lyrics out of the music. But yeah, like I every now and then I will have um a kind of moment of inspiration where I'll be like, a line will just come into my head and I'll write it down and then I'll try and work it into a song later. Um, but yeah, the lyrics kind of just fall into place when I'm working on the melodies. I'll often revise when it comes time to record, but yeah, a lot of the time, most of the lyrics that are in the demos end up being in the final product.
Cool. Yeah, that's really neat, how you just kind of hear it that way. So that's really, it's not like you're just sitting there just struggling, just I have to write these cool lyrics and this and that. It's like you kind of just get inspired by the music.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah, for sure.
yeah, it's just really neat. And so I know you mentioned like love and loss. Is that really kind of the overarching theme of Tragedy d'Amour? What ultimately what would you want the listener to kind of take away lyrically and I guess musically as well, just of the album. Even though the two kind of go hand in hand, but I guess they're both absorbed differently in a sense.
Yeah, yeah. So I really like that dichotomy of love and loss. I think they often go hand in hand, and they're such an integral part of the human experience. And I just had this feeling that that's where what I wanted to explore lyrically and musically. Following Advene. Advene was a uh, very kind of dark album lyrically.
Mm,
So I was sort of struggling a lot with mental health and addiction issues and everything through writing Advene, and so that certainly came about in the lyrics. And I think wanting to, reflecting on Advene and realizing, personally for me, it's such a bleak record. Um, there's a lot of kind of sadness and sort of defeat associated with that record for me, or at least writing it, just in terms
yeah.
of where I was in life. Um, I still wanted to explore loss and grief because those have been sort of quite central to my life over the last 3 to 4 years. But so was love, and I think having that bit of hope intertwined with all this kind of these gothic themes of melancholy and grief and suffering and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You kind of want to you need to come up for air every now and then, and yeah, and over the last 3 to 4 years, like I've gotten sober, I've gotten married, I've had a daughter, or my wife has had a
Wow.
daughter.
Right.
But there have been these real heights in my life. I feel like and then there's also been some deaths in the family, and there's been a lot of experiences in grief. So I feel like for me personally, there have been like the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. Um, and I think you know allowing the listener into that part of ourselves as artists um, is a great way of connecting because it's such a human experience. And I think what I'd personally like to the audience to take away from the album is that we want to be able to revel and celebrate your moments of love, and we want to be able to hold your hands in times of loss. And we receive so many messages from people talking about how our music has helped them through difficult times, and it's such a rewarding experience to receive those messages because as artists, you're really writing the music for yourself. You're kind of
Right.
it's this creative expression of you. It's capturing these emotions and moments within your life and presenting them as songs. Um, and so yeah, having an audience come back to you and say the songs really resonated with them, it's almost like a communal cathartic experience where you're bonding over the same emotions. You've all got different experiences, but there are these emotions that tie us together. And so yeah, like receiving those messages is such a wonderful part of what we do, and really helps drive us to create more.
Mm.
Um, because I feel like it's so cool. You never really want to, I guess, write for your audience because it's always it's your music is not an expression of your audience, and it's an expression of you. And I think
Yeah.
if you're being true to yourself as an artist, that's what you're putting out there. But the fact that it resonates with people is such a great part of doing this.
Yeah, I love that. Like you said, the artist has a right for themselves. And if other people love it too, awesome. If they don't,
Yeah,
oh well, you did it for yourself. So that's
that's right. Yeah,
cool.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And I was gonna say, do you get kind of nervous or scared almost to kind of bare your soul through the music and lyrics to the world pretty much?
Yeah, man. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Absolutely. I've I get filled with self doubt leading up to release. So it's like we'll come up with these songs, and demo them and then record them and everything like that. I'll be like, this sounds great. This is awesome. We're really proud of this body work. And then leading up to the release, I listen to them and I'm thinking about all the things I would have done differently. I'm thinking, oh no, this is really shit. What am I doing? Like, and it's kind of like when a song's released, I'll almost withdraw from like social media or anything
Yeah.
about the band. And I feel like I'm kind of hiding behind a rock, and I'll peek every now and then. And then if the response is good, I'll let myself come back out and
Right.
and engage with like the positivity because yeah, I look at never like receiving, I suppose, negative comments or critiques. I don't think it gets easier. I've been doing this for 15 years, and yeah, it's like you can receive all these wonderful comments, and then there's that one comment that's like, oh, this sounds awful. What do they do? This is garbage, and you go, oh, and you just feel it in your soul. Um, but yeah, I mean, you definitely try not to pay attention to that. It certainly doesn't. Uh, yeah, I certainly don't take as much note of it as I did before. But yeah, it's definitely still stings. But yeah, I think yeah, leading up to release, I definitely get nervous. But at the same time, it's what you're offering to
Yeah.
the world, and it's not about um, the people who don't like it. It's about the people who do like it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, it's just funny how you mention it. You can be scrolling through 100 positive comments and there's just one bad one in there, and that's what will stick with you. You'll be thinking
Yeah,
about it
yeah,
like
yeah.
all the time. It's like, oh man, but that person, and you'd almost forget about the 100 that said it's
Yeah,
amazing. It's like
right.
you just terrible. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
that's funny. But yeah, like you said, you just gotta take it in stride and try not to let it harm you.
yeah, for sure.
But another thing I really like about the band is y'all almost have kind of a cinematic quality, not only just through the music and the lyrics and the production and scope of just the album itself, but also in look and all that.
Mm.
How did all that come about? Because you see pictures of the band and whatnot, and you guys are all kind of dressed up in these gothic looking attire, and you got like makeup on and all this stuff, and what's that like kind of embodying that look or style?
Yeah, it's really cool, man. Like, I mean, it kind of comes with the territory of doing this kind of music.
Yeah.
And we all grew up as like emos and goths, you know what I mean? That was a big part. Like we were always, you're always the sort of outcasts
Yeah.
of youth and all that kind of stuff. And you've got this common bond, which is metal. And I think that's how a lot of us really became friends, was through our love of metal and love of music. And coming from, at least in my experience, coming from that sort of, I'm going to anger a couple of people by, throwing emo and goth in the same basket. But coming from that, I guess that, overarching alternative world,
Yeah.
um, it's really cool being able to be in the kind of band that I would have loved, as a teenager.
Yeah.
Um, and I think, it just enhances the experience of the listener. I think, world building is such an important part um, of like the metal subgenres. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I think, we certainly lean into the goth and vampire thing quite a bit. And I think if you're going to do that musically, you should probably do it visually as well.
Yeah.
Because it's theater, man. Like you're providing an experience.
Hmm.
Um, and, the visual is quite an important part of that, along with the music. So yeah.
Yeah. How do you guys kind of take that on stage persona? Um, what kind of goes into your live shows?
Yeah, so we have a lot of reviews that say our live shows are very entertaining and very energetic, which
Oh, awesome.
isn't really typical of like gothic bands, and I mean, like certainly with this record, like it is very upbeat. But the other thing is, man, like we're Australian, we're Aussie goths, and we can't help having a bit of banter and mucking around on stage.
Yeah.
I think particularly when you're doing this kind of music and exploring these themes, it is important to be able to have a laugh and not to take yourself too seriously. Um, yeah, it's because you don't want to kind of be bogged down in all that, misery, and you want to be able to put on a show that people go away talking about. And if you're just kind of standing there shoegazing, in your own little world. It works for some people, but I don't know. For us, man, like we really enjoy performing and we have a lot of fun on stage. And I think that juxtaposition of these these goths playing this kind of gothic rock symphonic metal, but doing this ridiculous stuff on stage. Like I'll often go down and terrorize the audience, and
Awesome.
there'll be synchronized moves and just I think on one tour we brought these rainbow sombreros for some reason,
Oh my Lord.
and just warm on stage, and it was just this party vibe, and it was kind of cool. And people coming up to us saying, "I didn't realize you're a party goth band," and we're like, "I didn't even know we were a party goth band myself. Like, didn't even know that was a thing." But
No, yeah.
but yeah, I don't know. It's cool, man. It's a weird little juxtaposition, but it seems to
Yeah.
work for us.
Cool. Yeah, I mean the goths are allowed to have a good time too,
Hey, that's
like
right, man.
you guys don't need to just be all out there standing holding black umbrellas and have like rain falling from the thing and
Yeah,
just
all that stuff is wonderful and romantic,
yeah.
but you got to have a little bit of fun every now and then.
Yeah, totally. What's the scene like in Australia as far as the symphonic metal or gothic rock, goes? Are you getting
It's
booking lots of shows, or is it difficult?
it's pretty challenging, man. This kind of music isn't really that big in our
Hmm.
corner of the world. It's something that we've struggled with for quite a while. It
Yeah.
was one of the reasons that I think the first album took so long to come out, was finding the right members who were fit our criteria and were actually into doing this kind of thing.
Yeah.
The big genres, I suppose, in Australia, you've got a more metalcore and sort of punk rock and indie and those kind of
Hmm.
genres. So the more Euro stuff, hasn't really taken off here. So it can be quite challenging. We have had decent turnouts at shows and stuff, and we've recently booked a tour with another metal band that we're really looking forward to. So we can definitely put on the shows, and we get all right numbers to them, but as a whole, as a genre, it's not really that popular here.
Yeah, that's tough. It reminds me of a while back, I spoke to a killer power metal band out there in Perth called Silent Force. Really great. No, Silent Night.
Oh, Silent
I
Night,
don't know.
yeah,
Yeah,
cool.
so I don't know. I think it's Silent Force. Yeah,
Yeah.
Silent Night. Yeah, great guys, and they kind of said a similar thing. It's difficult, but one thing they did say that's cool, I guess, is when some of the bigger bands like Hammerfall or someone shows up, they're able to be a guest because it's like
Yeah.
they're one of the only ones in the area that are along that style. So have y'all been able to play with any monsters of the genre?
Not particularly. Well, like, look, we we supported Wednesday 13, which was a bit weird
Yeah.
for us because we're sort of not that kind of band, but that was a really cool experience. We were in talks to support Billy Vallow from him
Oh
when he
man.
came over recently, but we just lost out to this sort of dark wave band
Okay.
who were really cool. But that was like a thing that we were sort of going back and forth with the promoter about, and it seemed really promising, but just never sort of eventuated.
Yeah.
But we do have friends. Like we've got a good friends of ours are a band called Valhalla from Brisbane up north,
Hmm.
and they're like this sort of symphonic Viking metal band.
Yeah.
And they nail a lot of sort of big international supports. So like we saw them with Camelot. They've been. I think they might. Don't quote me on this. I might be getting it wrong, but I think they're touring with Hammerfall because they're coming over soon. But yeah, there definitely are big opportunities there. It's just when the promoters can really afford to bring them out because Australia is so remote, and
Yeah.
it costs a lot of money to bring bands out here. And yeah, Silent Night, man, like great band, and like Perth, dude, like Perth is really hard, man, because like it's you often see big international bands come over, but they only they might only do the sort of big three like Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne.
Right.
Rarely do bands get to kind of like Adelaide and Perth. But yeah, man. So yeah, Adelaide and Perth are the really kind of they're the really tough nuts to crack, and we kind of struggle enough as it is in Sydney, and that's kind of one of the biggest cities. So yeah,
Yeah.
kudos to Silent Night, man. Like awesome.
No, yeah. Yeah, I love those guys. Maybe one day you guys will get to play a show together or something. That'd be
Yes, that'd
sweet.
be fantastic, man. Yeah, definitely.
It's funny you talking about Australia being difficult, and I'm here in the US, And as far as like power and symphonic metal goes, it could be tough. Like we don't get a lot of those European bands over here either because it's
Oh
just,
yeah.
difficult. Yeah, we got some cool bands in Canada and stuff like that, but
Mm.
yeah, I think it's tough for a lot of those European bands to get outside of Europe per se,
Yeah, for sure.
just to find the audience and what have you. But
Yeah, dude, and especially with like cost of living these days, like it seems to be hitting everyone. So
yeah, yeah,
like flights, accommodation, like it's so much, and then also the audience has to be able to afford the tickets. Like,
yeah.
um, so it can be really tough.
Any plans to kind of tour outside of Australia, or have you guys already?
No, so that's certainly the dream. Like,
Yeah,
the dream is always to tour internationally.
yeah.
Um, we do like the biggest countries, or like the countries that follow us the most tend to be like Finland, Sweden, Germany, the
Yeah.
US and the UK. I think like Australia is like eighth on our list of listeners.
It's like, come on,
Um,
guys.
so,
Like we're homegrown. Like
yeah,
where's
right,
the
right.
where's the respect?
That's yeah. But so I think getting over to some of those countries would be awesome. Yeah, no plans as of yet, but look, hopefully one day. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, we'll be able to do it.
Well, it seems like Tragedy D'Amour has landed pretty well across the world. How's it look on your end? How are you guys feeling with the reception? And does it seem like everything's growing, since Advene is Tragedy D'Amour kind of a new milestone? Or how's that, like I
Yeah,
said, how's
yeah,
that looking on your end?
absolutely, man. Like definitely, like the numbers have been great. Like they've smashed Advantage numbers out of the park in terms of that sort of release trajectory.
Yeah.
Um, but like, there's been a lot of work done behind the scenes, particularly by Mish and Jerry in the back end stuff. So in the
Mhm.
marketing, like they both did a marketing course, and have spoken to sort of multiple people and gotten some really good networking going, with some international mentors. Lindsay Schoolcraft, who used to be in Cradle of Filth, being one of them, who has an amazing sort of solo project that she does. So shout out to Lindsay because she's given us some incredible advice over the years, and her and Jerry get along really well. So yeah, Mish and Jerry have really been putting in the hard yards in terms of marketing, building the
Mhm.
socials, building the online presence. Um, and so yeah, I think a lot of the album's success so far has been to do with them really just building that online presence. Um,
Mhm.
the music can only do so much. And these days, bands are kind of expected to be able to do all that stuff themselves.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's such an integral part of being a band in the modern era. And
Mhm.
so having guys that are, keen on it and picking up those skills and developing that part of the band is so beneficial and incredible to have because like yeah, I don't think this album would have yeah, gotten out to many people if it wasn't for the hard yards that they put in.
Awesome. Yeah, it's tough kind of standing out or just getting your band in the ears of people or just, seeing images or what have you. Yeah, there's so much constant just stuff swirling around
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
everywhere.
totally.
So, yeah. Speaking about the band, would you mind talking a little bit about kind of just your relationship, amongst one another? It seems like y'all have a solid camaraderie there. I saw something, I forget which member posted something on Instagram. I don't know if it was today or yesterday, just
Mm.
talking about meeting the right people is
Mhm.
important, for one's just growth as a person and also just sanity, if you will. So are y'all like really close? Have y'all kind of really become friends and help lift each other up and things like that?
Yeah, dude, yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, like Mishka, the keyboard player, and I went to high school together. We've been best mates since
Oh
high
wow.
school. And so, yeah, like we've had that relationship since we were kids, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's sort of developed, in the creative sphere as well. Like I feel like we've got a really good creative chemistry. Two songs that we wrote together on Tragedy to More were like Thorns and Immortal, right? And
Mm.
they've been sort of some of the top performing songs. Jerry and I have known each other, yeah, for like 11 years now and
Wow.
worked together for that long. And I think, and Emma came into the band in about 2021. and she's yeah, just such an asset. She's such a wonderful person, super talented, like multi-instrumentalist. Writes her own music, like she's brilliant, and I think yeah, I think that the personality dynamic in the band is it works really well. We've sort of got like a division of labor, so everyone's kind of found their own place and their own strengths, and I
Yeah.
think being aware of that within the group and using it to your advantage has really helped to, I guess, foster that continued relationship. You know, you sort of you're not really getting anyone kind of stepping on each other's toes. We've all worked
Yeah.
together for so long that we've kind of figured out where everyone is in the band and yeah, sort of who does what in a sense.
Mhm.
And so it's kind of yeah, it's become this really kind of like symbiotic relationship,
Yeah.
for lack of a better word. And so yeah, and I think there have been challenges and conflicts in the past, but it goes like the old saying, being in a band's like being married. It's you kind of you just got to work through those problems. You're with
Yeah.
those people, and those people are such a big part of your life. And when creativity is so attuned to who you are as a person, and you're sharing that with people who feel the same. I think it is really important to look after those relationships. And so yeah, I think we've been really good at yeah, working things out sort of between us and seeing the value in what everyone brings to the table. And now it's kind of just this really natural feeling dynamic. So yeah.
Awesome. That's really cool. And lastly, I guess I just curious. I want to ask you, who would be like your dream vocalist to duet with, and who would be a dream band that you'd want to tour with?
Oh man, that's so hard. So like look, the big vocalists for me, Roy Khan,
Oh
uh,
yes.
dude, and Tommy Karabik, man. Like I love both
Yeah,
their
no.
a lot, man. Like I think, I've just stung to like Tommy back when he was in Seventh Wonder, man. Like I've listened to those bands to death.
Yeah.
Learned a lot about my own voice from practicing to their songs. Um, so there's certainly two. Russell Allen, Symphony X.
Hmm.
Love how dynamic he is as a vocalist and the amount of power that he's able to project, man. So yeah, in terms of I guess yeah, and of course Billy Ballard from him. But yeah, there's so many, dude. Because I'm also a big fan of like rock, and so there's a lot
Right,
of big
right.
rock vocalists like Milienko from Steelheart. Was a huge inspiration for me growing up. His voice kind of pulled me into that like rock and metal world, or at least the 80s, 90s kind of stuff.
Hmm.
Back when I was a kid. So like, yeah, man. So that, yeah, dude, I don't know. It's really hard. Mikhail Ackerfeld from Opeth. I don't know, man. It's
A lot, yeah.
there are
It
a
would have to
million
be an ensemble. Yeah.
different
Maybe you could
vocalists.
get them
Yeah,
all to
dude.
be like a backing choir for you or
Oh
something.
no, man.
Just all of
But I
them.
mean, like in terms, yeah, I guess in terms of a band that I'd love to go on tour with, like like just as a vocalist, I suppose removed from Carmeria would be like Avantasia or Aerion. You know what I mean? Like one
Oh
of those
yeah.
sort of those collaborative metal operas
Yeah,
that
yeah.
feature just like a cast of vocalists. Like, I used to say to my wife, like, it's always my dream one day to just feature on an Aerion album. Like, if I can get that, I reckon I can die happy. But yeah, dude. So yeah, either of those would be great. But yeah, man, I don't know. I love being in this band and I love being a singer and a songwriter. So I'm quite comfortable with where I am. But yeah,
Sweet.
if I could go on tour with anyone, maybe one of those two.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned that because I didn't even think about that. But you would just be just a perfect fit for Avantasia to feature like in some of those songs.
Oh,
I just
dude,
think
thanks,
that
man.
would
That's
vibe
unreal.
so well. That would be awesome. So yeah, if Tobias
Thanks.
Salmon is watching this, dude, hit Jordan up because yeah,
Oh
just
man, thank you. I'm gonna take that. I'll be
yeah,
smiling over
sweet.
that comment for a while, I think.
Truly though, man. Yeah, that would be wild. But awesome. So I mean, it seems like the future is bright for Carmeria. I'm looking forward to what you all continue to create. But until then, I'm definitely just like I know a lot of other folks out there are going to keep going back to Tragedy Dim or really, really phenomenal album. So yeah, you guys just keep on rocking and doing your thing, because it's cool and it stands out. Like I said, I love the kind of unique approach that you guys have, and yeah, it stands out from the noise. So really, really
Yeah,
cool.
thanks so much for that, dude. And like, I really appreciate you featuring us on your channel, man. Like,
Oh,
that was like to see that we took out the top spot in August, man. Like that, fuck, man. Like I was walking around with the biggest smile on my face,
oh
like all day, and I was
God.
like, I think I showed my boss at work. You know what I mean?
Oh
And
my
I was like,
gosh.
"Oh, yeah, look, it's you." So that was super cool to see, man. So thanks so much for that.
No, and thank you. I mean, that means a lot to me too, that you're like showing people, hey, look, this random guy has an opinion on YouTube.
No,
He
dude.
loves the album. So it's like, sweet. That means a lot to me too, that it meant a lot to you. So yeah, no,
Yeah, awesome.
killer stuff. It was an easy choice to make. But yeah, again, I'm looking forward to more. And thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. I really had a great time.
Yeah, no worries at all, man. And thanks so much. Look, I tend to ramble in interviews, so I'm sorry. Like, feel free to cut out whatever you want. But
No.
thanks so much for having me, man. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you.
No, thank you. And yeah, everyone, if you haven't already, check out Carmeria. Their latest album recently dropped, called Tragédie d'Amour. Give it a listen. And down in the description below, I'm going to list all things Carmeria, links to music videos, links to socials, website, all that good stuff. Now is a good time, if you're not already, to follow them on socials, see what they get up to in the future, and yeah, listen to their music. So thank you all so much for watching, and thank you, sir, one last time. Wish you and the band the best, and I'll catch you all next time. Ranger,
Thanks again, dude. Cheers.
out.